Let's talk about cell formats in Excel. Right here on the screen, I've got a list of patients and phone numbers which a medical company needs to be contacting every so often. So they give this to their secretary and they say start calling these people and write down what you get, whether they need to be called back later or there was no answer or whatever. And the physician here adds notes for the secretary, tell the patient he needs to talk to the physician, tell the patient his billing is due, or whatever. Okay, the thing is, if you look at this, it's pretty confusing because there's really no difference between any of the letters here, and these titles are aligned to the left, which makes them misalign with the numbers that you have in the columns. In general, it's hard to look at this spreadsheet. So let's see how we can play around with these formats and make it a little bit easier to read and a little more attractive. If you remember at the start of this tutorial, I talked about the home menu and the format options that we had there. That's where all our font format options live, right here in home. And we have all these tools that we can use to change letter formats. So right here, we have control over what font we use for the cell contents, what size font we use for the cell contents. These two little buttons here, they increase or decrease the size of the font. This is boldface, italics, underline. This controls the cell borders, and this thing fills the cell with a certain color, and this other one changes the color of the letters inside the cells. These align the text of the cell. You have left aligned, center, and right aligned. And these up here, they change the alignment of the font in the vertical sense. Now right here, it's really hard to see vertical alignment because these cells are really not that high. But for example, if I increase the height of this row, you can see that the text is aligned on the bottom of the row. Now I can change that simply by clicking here so that it's middle aligned. And it's a little bit nicer to read. Or I can top align it or whatever. But let's go back to the way it was before. Okay, let's start by changing the font. Now, I want this title to have a different font, so I click here. First, I put my cursor on the cell that I want to change. Remember that you're not changing the fonts for the entire worksheet. You're only changing the cells that are selected. So since I've only selected cell B2, that one's going to change format and the others are going to remain the same. So let's select the font here, say this one, and I want that to be a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is select a font size here, say 14. Okay, there we go, that's easier. Now this one, let's put it in italics. I select this one and click the I. And there it goes into italics. Or if you notice in the description, it says in these parentheses that I can also press Control I. So if I press Control I on my keyboard, I get italics. Same thing if you press Control B, you're going to get boldface like that. But let's leave this in italics. Now these titles should be boldface. I think they would look better like that. So I'm going to select them. Remember how to select an entire row. You click on one end and you click on the other end while holding down the Shift key. Like that. You can also take your cursor, hold down the button and drag across. You're going to select cells that way. So I'm going to press B for boldface. And let's center this on the column. In order to center align the cell content, you press this little button here, which says center, and there we go. We're center aligned. Now, center aligned doesn't always work. Look, since we centered this one looks fine, but this one's a little misaligned, of course, because this column's a little too wide for this title. The title is centered, but the person's last name, or first name, I mean, isn't centered. So let's center this one too. Now a real easy way to do this is simply to select the entire column and center it. Just like that. Phone number looks fine. Last contacted looks fine. Last date looks alright. Now this result, this thing looks weird. This one's centered and this one's left aligned. So I'm going to do the same thing. Select the entire row and center like that. Okay, and that looks a lot better and easier to read now. Now, what happens if I want to color certain cells like this? Well, in order to adjust the font color, I use this little option here, which says font color. Say I want to mark this one in red, and I also want to mark this one in red. So I select the cells, I go up here to the font color, and I select the color red. I can use this red, I can use these reds, or I can select more colors, and right there I've got a whole range of reds. If I use standard or custom, I can adjust, I can make real fine adjustments on the tone of red that I have. I usually go for standard colors. Those are easier to work with than those custom colors, and they also print better. So there we go. Now these rows are red. Now, for example, what I can tell the secretary to do is when you contact someone and you manage to contact them, mark the cell in green. So what you do to mark the cell in green is you select here contacted and you go right here to the fill bucket. This thing fills the cell with a certain color. So you drop down and you select green. You can select your favorite tone of green. I find this light green works real well. Right there. And also these, for example, if I wanted to mark them, just click like that. Okay, and that's how you color, align, and change the font in cells. Let's try changing this one to another font. What I'm going to do is select like I did before, Control, Shift, and the down arrow to move to the end of that column. And select everything in between. And let's try another font for this one. Maybe this one, Arial, looks alright. And I'm going to change the font size to make this one a little bit smaller. Just like that. Okay, and that looks a lot easier to read. So as you can see, formatting text is pretty simple here. In Excel, you just use these little keys here. Now, if you want even more font formatting options, you can press the corner right here. Look at this menu, font, right here on the very corner, you have this little indicator, which opens up an additional menu where you have every option you can imagine for formatting text. Here you have certain things that you don't have in other places. For example, you have strike through. Let's say that this patient no longer exists at our company. So I'm going to go like that. I'm going to drop down this menu. And I'm going to mark strike through. And that's going to put this little line right across my text. It's kind of like drawing a line. This thing doesn't exist anymore or doesn't apply anymore. That's a real interesting option that few people know about. Now, other things that I can do here, I can use Superscript or Subscript. That's real useful for when you're working with units. What do I mean by units? Well, sometimes you have to write a quantity like 1,000 square meters. And square meters is an M with a little 2 next to it. But in Excel, if you try to write M2, you're going to get something that looks like this. See? Just like that. You get 1,000 M2. Now, most people understand that's square meters, especially if they're in the technical fields, but you send this over to a financial manager or something like that, and they're going to go, what the heck is M2? They're going to start looking for what store is called M2 or what room is called M2. They're going to get completely lost. Now, Superscript means that this 2 gets put into a little size and gets sent up here. So if I take the home menu and I drop down the additional options here and I go to font and select Superscript, watch what happens. See, the thing gets little and it gets sent to the very top of the row. Now that's not something that you do normally. The M has to be a normal size. The 2 is what gets little and gets sent up to the top of the row. And how do you do that? Well, it takes a little more work, but you can do it. Okay, what you do is you select your cell and you click up here. See, it says M2, same as the cell content. You can click up there, or you can select the cell and press F2. When you press the F2 key, and notice I'm saying the F2 function key, it doesn't mean press F and then 2. Now look for the F2 key on your keyboard and press the F2 key, and you get your cursor here where you can edit. Then, as if I were editing in Word or anywhere else, I'm going to select the 2 like that, and with the 2 selected, I'm going to drop down the font menu. See, and right there I can select Superscript and watch what happens. See, now only the 2 get sent up to the top of the row. So once again, if you need to do that, what you do is press F2, select the 2, drop down the font menu, and press Superscript. And only the 2 get sent up. Now, same thing with subscript. Subscript you can use, for example, for mathematical variables, or for example, sometimes you have to do something like this, 1,000 meters. And aside from the meters, it turns out that there's a little note here. For example, note 3. And this thing looks terrible. It's kind of uncomfortable to read. So what you do is this. You select note 3, drop down the font, and select subscript, and note 3 gets sent down to the bottom of the row, and that's a lot nicer to read right there. So that's how you use subscript and superscript in Excel. What else do you have here at the font drop down? Well, you have colors, you have underlines, you have the size, you have the alignments right here. See, this is a lot more complete than the other menu you have. You can select your text alignment for horizontal, vertically. You can have text control, wrap text, stuff like that, merge cells. We're going to look into that a little bit later. Right here are your fill controls. This is the exact same thing that we did before with the fill bucket. Only right here you have a lot more colors, standard colors that you can select. And you can also play around a little bit with the patterns. For example, I can do this. Bring the drop down here. Go to fill, and I can fill this with red. Now if I do this, it's going to fill it with a solid red color like that, but I can also put patterns in there. Now go to fill, pattern color, do it like that, and pattern style. For example, let's try diagonal lines, and be sure to turn off your font color here, your background color, select no color. And when we do this, watch what happens. See, now I've got a bunch of diagonal lines of a red color filling my cells. So those are all the different options that you can use to format your fonts and make your worksheets look a lot more attractive. I mean, when you have something like this compared to how it was before, where everything was the same size and the same letter type and aligned to the left, this is a lot easier to read. Still, as you can see, as you start working it and putting different colors in it, it starts to look kind of messy. So every once in a while you have to look at it and see what you need to change, maybe delete some rows, maybe move rows to the end of the sheet, stuff like that, to make it easier to read. That's the important things when it comes to formatting fonts in Excel. Don't go crazy with the formats, and keep your worksheets easy to read and as clean as you possibly can. That's the real secret here to formatting in Excel. Thanks for watching this video tutorial. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe to our channel and to visit our website, cubicleoverlords.com, for more instructional videos like this one.